young CB3.
Oh, you're going. All right.
If you can have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, in the history of mankind, you got to sit down and share dinner and a conversation, who would it be with?
That's such a hard question. So anytime I've thought about this in the past or been asked this question, I never go with the route of like a celebrity or like someone that everyone knows. For some reason, it's always
Okay.
been people in my life, right, that are no
Okay.
longer here. And so like
Mm.
there's really three that I go between. And I think just because different times in life, but
Right.
My grandfather, Paul, who was like at this point in my life, I would just love to be able to have a conversation with him because he was like the most humble, committed, old school, like gentleman that like I didn't even know half the stuff about him until his funeral. Like people start talking about him.
Yeah.
And I was younger at the time. And so like just I wasn't able to comprehend the impact on living a life that way for as long as he did. Like being married for 60 years with my grandmother. Right. And so there's that. There's where I am now compared to when my father passed away a few years back.
Yeah.
And like the level of maturity that I've and the ways I've grown in the past couple of years, that I would love to be able to go back and start having some of the conversations that you and I are having.
Yeah.
Around masculinity and being a man, and also I think to like share a lot of like my pain and right my anger and some of these things. I just didn't have the capacity to connect with him in those ways before he wasn't here anymore.
Yeah.
And probably the big one was my homeboy who was murdered when I was 21, and Christopher Burrow. You know, I see it all the time on my side as I've got the big angel tattoo on my ribs, and
Yeah.
I think about that. I think about everything that's happened in the last 17 years since he passed, and think like how interesting a conversation would be, and like what would I talk about, right? From getting sober and like all the things that have happened in the last 17 years. So I think that's probably the one that would be the most interesting, because going from being like 21 to now and being able just to connect in that would be fascinating.
Steve, man, that's good. Not expecting that answer. It's the gut level. It's the gut level. Yeah, it's the gut level. It's the gut level.
You have now tuned into the Gut Level Podcast.